right here. We've got a guest who's going to give us some insights on this. Carl Larry, good to see you again. He is the president of Oil Outlooks and Opinions, joining us live from Houston. And I guess the question is, it looks like the legislators want to approve the project. The environmental impact statement says this project should probably likely go through. It's up to Obama. Is there a but here?
Well, I think that, you know, he's been, President Obama has been a staunch backer of environmentalism ever since he took office. So it's kind of backtracking on what he said from, you know, his beginning in his campaign. But there's a lot of pluses to this idea that if it does happen, it's going to be better for America.
Carl, this is Jessica Stone, and we've talked before about Keystone XL. The president actually has already approved 4 pipelines during his presidency. Most of them don't carry crude oil. Some of them do. What do you think it says that he has had an appetite for some export pipelines to Canada back and forth, but he hasn't had the appetite yet for this one? It's been 5 years.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that we have to be worried about right now. I think Canada has come to this point where they feel that if it's not going to come down through the U.S., it's going to go around the U.S., and then obviously it's going to go out to export it also. So there's a good chance that Canada tries to rail to the West Coast or down to the Gulf Coast and export their own crude to other countries that do want the crude. So if that happens, I think the U.S. all of a sudden becomes like this secondary player in the market where they need this commodity. So I think Obama really has a decision to make here sometime soon.
Well, that's the choice Canada has been giving the president, saying it's either China or you that gets this oil, but there aren't any crude export licenses being granted to U.S. exporters. I mean, how do you think this could be turned into an export pipeline, as many of the critics suggest?
Well, I mean, it goes hand in hand. If we get Keystone, we're going to have to get some kind of export revision for crude oil here in America. What happens is you get this grade of crude, heavy sour, that comes from Canada down to the U.S. And what the U.S. already has with our fracking revolution is light sweet. So we have an overabundance of light sweet. We'll get new supply of heavy crude, and we can start exporting that light sweet out. So one deserves the other. You know, I don't think that we're going to have exports of crude if we can't get Keystone, and vice versa.
Carl, what impact is this going to have on oil prices and for consumers around the world?
Well, let's just say oil prices, things will stay steady. I don't think it's going to be anything we have to worry about. Prices getting higher. I think around the world we're going to see lower prices. There's definitely a supply that's going to back up now that we're backing out more imports into the U.S. and pushing more into the oil market in the world. But one of the things that's important here is that if oil prices do stay high or around this level for now, it's going to be a really big boon for American GDP. The more oil that we refine and export, the crude oil that we have that we could export, it really could increase the amount of commerce that we see in America.
Carl, there's been this hiccup in the emerging markets of late, and of course, some of the commodity prices, including oil and nat gas, has been affected. I'm just curious, when you look at the overall global market for crude oil, are they addressing the issue of demand, or are they addressing more the issue of supply with this pipeline?
Well, I think it's more about demand, and I think that it comes down to, you know, who's growing where and how fast. I mean, when we say emerging markets are not growing as fast, that happens. All economies go up and go down, but it's the major economies that we really have to keep an eye on. China seems to be doing okay, and possible that they're going to get back on track and maybe stronger growth this year. America seems to be doing just the same. And if we see more from Europe, you know, these are countries that we need to see continue to on the path of growth. Smaller countries that, you know, are having the bumps in the road right now are still going to be a problem, but not as big of a problem as if these larger economies do well.
This is Jessica again, Carl. Let me just ask you this for investors who might want to be investing in the building of these types of pipelines. One of the arguments here by those that oppose Keystone is that if the Keystone XL pipeline is built, it will lead to the green lighting of all of the other pipeline proposals between Canada and the United States, and that would increase the development of the oil sands, which they think is bad environmentally. But on the flip side, it could mean something to investors. What are you hearing about projections on that from those that are forecasting?
Well, you know, like I said earlier, if these oil sands go up because of Keystone, it's one thing. But these oil sands, if they do go up, are going to go up regardless of whether we see oil come through America or if oil goes around through Canada and off the either seaboard. But I think what a lot of people are looking at least in the investing side, is that rail is still strong. It's going to stay strong. And then if we see more exports going through, I think refinery stocks are going to be on top of the board here too.
So here we go. Is a 90-day comment period. What should we expect next, at least for this Keystone XL pipeline? Should we expect something in the next 3 months?
Well, I think we should be expecting something sooner than later, but I think what happens next, I think with the White House announcing that President Obama is headed over to Saudi Arabia to talk to them, not just maybe about Iran and the negotiations that are going on there, but what could be happening here in the U.S. If we see Keystone approved, if we see oil exports approved, I think that's going to have a major impact on Saudi Arabia also. So it's going to be a pretty interesting next couple of weeks to see what happens, not just with the approvals here, but what happens with our Saudi relations also.
And I was just going to say to Phil, Carl, here that we know there's going to be a lot of protests and a public comment period over this period of time. Do you anticipate that that would have any concrete impact on the markets, on investment, on the president himself to make him change his mind?
I do, but I think it's one bad thing for the other. We have to look for the greater good here. If we don't approve these things and commodities like crude oil go outside of the U.S., we're going to be looking at a higher price of oil for Americans. If we don't approve these things, we could just see, again, higher oil prices regardless. If we do approve them, we could see a strengthening the economy based on the commerce that this increase in jobs. So it's a tough argument for both sides, but we have to give up one thing to gain another.
Carl, Larry, Jessica Stone, the next couple months obviously are going to be key. Thank you very much for your input on this discussion.